The HTC One M8 is a phone that hopes to offer the best of the smartphone market, something that will survive the onslaught of the iPhone 6 and the Samsung Galaxy S5 while preserving HTC's long-standing heritage. Through a clever combination of technology and design, it appears the company has managed to do just that. The result is something that can compete with Samsung on the technological front, yet still stand toe-to-toe with Apple, arguably the producer of some of the best-looking devices of all time. The M8 is a phone that's as much about premium design as anything else, building on the philosophy of last year's model while improving in just about every area. The metal chassis is still there and now makes up 90% of the frame, up from about 70% previously. This is probably the most striking visual change, and it's one that makes you feel like you're holding something incredibly premium in your hand. The really good news though is that the M8 comes in the microSD slot, offering a cheap and easy way to boost the 16 or 32GB of onboard storage up to 128 gigs. The HTC One M8 is running the latest version of Android 4.4 KitKat, making things speedier under the finger, introducing transparent menu bars, and bringing greater prevalence of full-screen apps. The quad-core Snapdragon 801 under the hood is exceptionally quick, and coupled with 2 gigs of RAM, you're unlikely to see any slowdown even if you're a multitasking machine. When it comes to blink speed, HTC reckons it's brought a decent upgrade to Sense 6. It's definitely improved over the previous iteration, and visually it's been tweaked too, although most changes are subtle. It's an app that still needs work though. Choosing topics and services the first time around can be time consuming, and you'll probably just end up selecting stuff with wild abandon. HTC has also nabbed a new feature that's making its way to more Android phones, double tapping the screen to wake and lock it. It's an intuitive gesture that Nokia introduced on its Lumia devices, and since then it's been featured more heavily on the LG G2. For some reason, HTC's version can be a little hit or miss when the phone's lying flat on a surface, but it works flawlessly when in hand. In addition to the double tap feature are the motion gestures, which allow you to perform 4 different actions when the phone is locked by swiping from different sides of the screen. For example, opening the camera app and taking you to the last used app. It's definitely one of the better motion gesture controls we've seen, but the question remains over whether we really need it. One of the main criticisms of the HTC One was the fact it really sucked down battery when you used it heavily. The problem was rectified to a degree with software updates, but it didn't do away with it completely. The good news is the power pack in the HTC One M8 is much better. We'd wager you'd easily get 2 days medium usage out of it, and the new quick charge ability means you can top up quickly once things do go into the red. On top of this is the extreme power saving mode, which sits somewhere between Samsung's ultra power saving mode and Sony's stamina mode. Other than design, the new duo camera on the M8 is the feature that will mark it out from the competition. Yes, it's still the same ultra pixel technology from last year, and it's not seen much of a bump in the megapixel space, but the overall output is much enhanced. It's the new depth sensor that really makes the difference here, allowing you to refocus images after you've taken them and giving you a huge level of control over your photos. Still, in terms of the pictures you'll actually take, it's more of a mixed bag. It seems this effort to capture all the extra info has a consequence, as any scene with light coming in from another source will wash out the photo and cause parts of it to become overexposed. This isn't to say the M8 isn't a fine camera phone, because it absolutely is. The shutter speed and autofocus are blazingly fast, and in low light it's almost beyond compare, but that's only one part of the puzzle. The last thing to mention is the two-tone flash, which is similar to the one on the iPhone 5S. This gives a much more natural illumination, especially for skin tone. HTC has gone to great lengths to talk up its improved speakers on the front of the device, which it needs to given the added size needed to house them. The good news is they're so much better than last year, and the original one's sound wasn't bad at all. Audio is clearer and richer, giving a clean overall sound even when pumped up to maximum volume. Still, we're not 100% convinced by BoomSound. The speakers are great, but they add a lot of height to the phone, and we wonder how much use you'll get out of them given modern smartphone use. The HTC One M8 is not completely without flaw. The camera is disappointing in some areas, and there are a couple of places where it feels like HTC has tried to do a bit too much or be too overcomplicated. But that and poor naming aside, the One M8 is a phone that takes the superb DNA of last year's device, improves it in nearly every way, and then packs it full of all the latest technology, and still finds space to stick a microSD slot. Fresh from making the best handset of 2013, HTC has managed to do it all over again. If you want a phone that looks the absolute business in the smartphone world and builds in some top-end features, we'll wager you won't do better in 2014, unless Sir Johnny Ive has something absolutely spectacular up his sleeve.